Live in Atlanta, Brandon Marcello joining us here, of course, from 24/7 Sports. Before I ask you all these awesome football questions that I'm sure you're going to have wonderful answers for, this is this is all brought to you, of course, by J.E. Dunn, our wonderful sponsor. Great place to work, top 100 company in the country. It's amazing, Brandon, what happens when you work for people who really care about you. So go check out J.E. Dunn, healthiest workplace in the United States, and, of course, a $5 billion annual revenue. So jedunn.com. Check them out. All right, so day number 2. Have you had a sense that it's more subdued? I've been coming to these things for over 15 years. Doesn't it feel more – I don't know if it's corporate. What are your thoughts on the vibes?
I do think it is getting a little bit more corporate. We're seeming to get closer and closer to this being the NFL no fun league zone. In fact, I think I tweeted that on the first day with Greg Sankey talking about how we don't talk about other teams. They're talking about the Jimbo Fisher, Nick Saban stuff. And it's just like, why are we just trying to put ourselves in these tight positions where we can't have some fun here? And it just no one's saying anything really controversial. And here's the thing: this is the time to be saying things that are controversial because so much is changing. So many crazy things are going on in college sports.
So are you more, just personally, do you find all that stuff, like I find realignment as to be catnip, but I'm sure people are kind of tired of talking about it. So are you more interested in how do we solve NIL, how do we fix realignment, how do we save the group of 5? Are you more interested in that stuff, or is your brain starting to transition to like, man, at Arkansas is a tough game for Bama, at Mississippi State's tough for Georgia, or Michigan has to go to Iowa. Like, where's your head at right now?
My head is in that, like, I'm looking at this upcoming season. I'm looking at personnel. Like everybody else, a lot of people, I'm reading the preseason magazines. I've bought every single one that I can.
Just Athlon Sports, right?
Sure. That's what I meant. I've bought like 20 copies of the Athlon magazine is what I meant. But I'm digesting everything because I'm just, one, it's my job, but secondly, I'm obsessed with it and always have been with college football. And, that's the thing. Like, I go talk to these coaches one-on-one. I have to ask those big-picture questions, NIL, conference realignment, but I want to know how they feel about their teams. I mean, for example, Mississippi State's a team that no one's really talking about. They got 17 starters returning, the most in the SEC. They're still pretty young, not a lot of seniors, but that's a lot of guys. And Will Rogers, by the way, did something interesting to me that only Joe Burrow's ever done in college football, which is throw as many touchdowns as he did with his little interceptions along with the yardage total, which is a lot of pigeonhole things. But what I'm saying is that there's a lot of interesting storylines from team to team. And I think we get bogged down in, like, let's get every coach's opinion on USC and UCLA joining the Big Ten or what NIL. Listen, NIL stuff, that's going to work itself out, and it really doesn't affect fans anyway. You're not getting paid. I mean, the players are, and personally, that's great the players are getting it. It's about time they get paid, but that really doesn't affect what we see on Saturdays, and so let's talk about that.
All right, well, that's what we're here to do, and I think it's interesting that Mike Leach – it's not interesting. I think it's on brand that Mike Leach went with 3 graduate seniors to come and not Will Rogers, the guy, if it wasn't for Joe Burrow and Bryce Young, would be the all-time leading passer in SEC history. I'm with you on Mississippi State. I'm having tough time deciphering Mississippi State, LSU, Arkansas in the West. I think A&M is slightly better than them right now on paper, but Mississippi State's schedule, man. And again, they went on day 2. Mike Leach is very confident. By the time he gets to year 3 of a program, he's generally pretty good. I think Zach Arnett's doing good things on defense. I'm with you. The schedule – I don't know. To me, annoying is the way I would describe Mississippi State. They're going to cause problems and maybe ruin some championship hopes.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And this might be a team that will look much improved, but maybe still win 7, maybe even 8 games. But I'm with you. Like, I think there's 3 or 4 programs in the SEC West that are going to all be battling each other for like 9 wins this year. And Ole Miss, LSU, Arkansas, Mississippi State are probably in that group to me. But you look around – there's a lot of confidence in like Ole Miss and Arkansas to maybe be 9-win teams. But the truth is Ole Miss replaces the best quarterback they've had since Eli Manning, in my opinion. And then also you got to replace your offensive coordinator, which everybody, Lane Kiffin, that's his offense. But that there is something to be said there about the play calls on game days and how it's going to change. And I think Ole Miss is maybe we're overselling them a little bit. Arkansas probably the same way. They lost Traylon Burks, who's an All-American type receiver. That's a lot to replace, and they have to replace like 2 huge seniors at linebacker. But again, we got to get in the weeds here about these teams because I think a lot of people are just kind of taking it from a 30,000-foot view. They're not really looking at everything. But Mississippi State, like you said, that schedule not very conducive for them, but they've got so many starters and production returning. And Will Rogers and Hendon Hooker, two guys that quarterbacks we don't really talk about because Bryce Young's in the SEC, and Anthony Richardson, who everybody's falling in love with before he even plays at Florida. But those two guys are the most potent quarterbacks in the SEC, including Bryce Young, because of those offenses they run.
I think hosting Georgia late in the year, I think we've kind of talked a lot about it being a big-time trap game for Georgia. They're going to play Florida, and then they're going to play Tennessee. A lot of emotion in those two games, and then they're going to then they have to go to Starkville and to Kentucky, play that Will Rogers offense, that Mike Leach offense with the Cowbells on the road after two tough games. If you're circling one for Georgia, I think Mississippi State's the one to circle. Alabama, I'll tell you this. Give me the Alabama game you've circled, and give me the Georgia game you've circled, because those are going to be the overwhelming favorites to win the divisions.
I don't have a game scheduled or circled for Alabama. I think Alabama's going to kill everybody in the SEC. I'm being quite honest. I think it's going to be very similar to what we saw 2 years ago, if not better. I think they're going to challenge that team 2 years ago, which I think is the greatest in modern college football history, in my opinion, that Alabama team 2 years ago. They're going to challenge that title. They're going to be insane this year. Georgia, I'm with you. I think that trip to Mississippi State is very intriguing to me. And Mississippi State played Georgia very close last season. That was a tight game for them. And by the way, Mississippi State went in that game shorthanded. I think they had something like 45 scholarship players or something crazy like that ready to go. Yeah, there's some interesting games that we don't really talk a lot about because we're looking at the big games like Alabama at Texas. That I would say if I'm going to circle one, that's potentially it. But Alabama routinely early in the season, they kill opponents in the non-conference schedule. But the one difference, of course, this is a neutral site game like all those other ones have been in the past. This is in Austin, and Austin, Texas is going to be rocking. And you got Quinn Ewers. He's going to be the starter at quarterback, you would think. And some new pieces as skill players. They could maybe shock Alabama, but everything begins in the trenches, and Texas does not have the big hogs, so to speak, in the trenches to compete.
Well, and it's interesting. I think LSU, I want to say Joe Burrow, that was one of their toughest games in 19, was going to Texas, and that wasn't a particularly great Texas team. So I'm a big believer. It sounds like we're both on board with Mississippi State being sort of a really sneaky good team this year, undervalued. You mentioned Ole Miss, and I'm kind of with you. I think it's a testament to Lane Kiffin and to Ole Miss, who went on Monday and day one, that they could lose the best quarterback potentially in school history, not named Eli Manning, the best regular season that they've had in the history of the program, and still be a 7 or 8 win type of team. I think that's a compliment to them. I just don't see the horses, man. So we haven't talked a lot about Ole Miss. Do you see the talent, the depth for them to – I know they've got an early easy schedule, but the back end of their schedule is real hard. I have them sixth. I have them sixth in the West with Auburn at the bottom because I like Arkansas. I like Mississippi State. I think LSU is going to be better. Your thoughts, sir?
If LSU's offense is clicking earlier in the season, I like LSU over Ole Miss in the standings, I should say, not head-to-head necessarily. But Ole Miss, let's see how they are coming out of the gate. I think if they have to lean on the running game, they're going to be fine, I think, early in the season. But they got to get the passing game going. And listen, based off the things I'm hearing in Oxford and the people who know those quarterbacks, Altmaier is the guy right now. Really? I think it's his job to lose. It's not Jackson Dart. And Jackson Dart is not a very consistent passer, not someone you can count on down to down at this point. And until he gets that maturity mentally to a point where you can count on him from down to down, that looks like an offense that might be best run by Altmaier. But we'll see.
That's the first person. You're the first person I've heard say Altmaier. Now, I know he's got the experience, of course, in the system, and he's been there longer, and Dart's kind of the guy that we always assume when we see the transfer in the 4 stars that they're just going to step right in. But
I think that's a problem, is that we kind of just assume those things. USC transfer coming in, but Dart is kind of like a 50% passer, and that's not going to work in that Lane Kiffin offense. It just doesn't work.
No, it's got to be real fast, real accurate, real efficient. All right, South Carolina, let's wrap up day number 2. Shane Beamer, of course, all over the social media platforms, just dominating people.
I still haven't seen that. Was he dancing, I hear?
Yes, and I'm too old to be able to describe it to you exactly what it was, but it's on TikTok, and he's jumping into the room, and there's music going on. And again, but like this is part of what makes him interesting as a coach. They certainly overachieved last year when it comes to and I've had a chance to talk to him about this. Like he's learned a lot in his first season, but they also got Auburn and Florida and Vanderbilt at the right times. They kind of barely beat Vanderbilt. Are you buying Spencer Rattler? Shane believes that Spencer is equipped to handle the adversity because he dealt with so much at Oklahoma that he's ready for it in a tougher schedule and a tougher conference. And Shane clearly has gotten the buy-in thing to happen.
Spencer Rattler was the most absurdly over-criticized player in college football last season. This is a guy that if you take his numbers, his completion percentage, and everything he was doing at OU, he's breaking school records at South Carolina, and South Carolina fans are worshiping the guy. So if he comes anywhere close to even what he was able to do at OU, he's going to do great there, and they're going to win games. They're going to get to a bowl game. Again, it's going to be about that schedule. But secondly, they might have the best group of tight ends in the country. They might have one of the top 5 groups of tight ends in the country at South Carolina. And so I like kind of the way they're building this team. I don't know if necessarily they're going to win 8 games or 9 games this year, but getting to 7 wins certainly probable. And Spencer Rattler, as long as he stays on the straight and narrow and doesn't let the outside noise kind of derail him a little bit, they're gonna see some special things at Gamecock Nation this year.
I think Georgia might disagree with the tight end comment.
Oh, absolutely. Here's the thing. I mean,
but your point is valid.
Yeah. I mean, listen, but South Carolina, that's a tight end group I don't think we're talking enough about. It's a top 5 unit.
Yep, absolutely, no question about it. You can follow them, of course, all over the Twitter sphere. You know the webs, the .com, you know all of that. Now you got all the live stream stuff going as well. Tell everybody where they can find you.
At 247sports.com and on Twitter at @bmarcello.
There you have it, of course. J.E. Dunn, our great sponsor, bringing you all this great content this week from Atlanta. Top 100 healthiest place to work, industry-leading benefits, 2022 best place to work as well. So, again, novel concept. Make sure your employees are happy and productive and healthy, and you have a good business. It's a crazy idea. I don't know how that works. More people maybe should think about that. Brandon, thank you so much, man. We appreciate it. Check out 24/7 Sports, of course. This has been Fringe Element here on the Full 40 Sports Network.